A tropical disturbance in the Atlantic is likely to become Gabrielle later this week. I've got all the information you need to know. Your forecast across the Caribbean and the Bahamas starts right now.
This is Meteo Mundo.
Hi friends, Rusty back here at Meteo Mundo. We are your home for Caribbean weather. It's great to see you on this Monday. I hope you're doing well. For our United States viewers, a happy Labor Day. I hope things are going well for you. Coming up in this video, we're going to be talking about the wave coming off of the West African coast, already showing signs of life. Hurricane Center already has it as an orange area, so we'll deep dive into a wave that's likely to become Gabrielle later this week. We've had some impactful weather across the area today as well, so what do you say we get started? Meteo Mundo is sponsored by the Lean Law Firm of Central Florida. They're your hometown homeowners insurance attorneys. It's storm season. A storm comes into your area, you get damage of any kind. They walk you through every step of the insurance claim process. They offer free consultation and policy reviews. Go to leanonmelaw.com if you would like more information. Now, as always, we'd love to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comments section below where you're viewing from. You want to give me a shout to what's been happening with the weather in your area. I appreciate that as well. We'll start off with our surface analysis. This boundary over central South Florida and the northern Bahamas, it's a troublemaker. It's causing waves of showers and storms. Just some impactful weather here early this week. We'll highlight those spots. Tropical wave moving through the western side of the Caribbean is also billowing up some showers and gusty winds. Another tropical wave, which will be moving into the eastern Caribbean early this week. And then we have the one that has just come off the West African coast, but that is the one that is likely to quickly develop into a tropical system. Now, because we don't have anything imminently happening tropically right now, we're going to jump into the impactful weather across the area today and then deep dive into the tropics. I am going to start with what's been happening in the Bahamas. Again, last several videos, we've just talked about how this boundary stalled out is producing waves of energy, and we've just had very efficient thunderstorm activity across the northern and northwest Bahamas. That's what it looks like on the enhanced satellite imagery. You can see everything is developing off of that boundary and then pushing off to the south, all the way as far south now as the southeast Bahamas. I mean, the Acklands are getting into a couple of showers, but even Long Island and Exuma and Rum Cay and San Salvador up towards Cat Island, Eleuthera, Andros, New Providence, healthy thunderstorms over the Abacos. Grand Bahamas had a couple of passing showers and isolated thunderstorm, even on over towards the Walker's Key and Bimini as well. We'll bring on the live radar out of the Miami, Florida area for us here. And again, just showing you how widespread the storms are. Can't rule out some very gusty winds, a lot of heavy rainfall, lightning, and even a little bit of rotation with the storms, and a water spout is not out of the question. You can clearly see the spin off the east coast of Florida at the hour. There is a mid-level low out here. Now, it's not looking like it's going to get to the low levels. It's not looking like it's trying to develop in any tropical fashion here, but when I bring on the visible satellite imagery to go along with the radar loop, you can clearly see that spin, and there's just a lot of moisture and lift in the atmosphere to produce these storms. So it's just going to be another very active afternoon into the evening hours. Again, for Walker's Key, Freeport, Lucaya, Marsh Harbor, Bimini, New Providence, Nassau, Androstown, on over towards Eleuthera. These are the spots with the best chance for storms. The funny thing about it is when it's not storming, it's been very hot in the Bahamas, and we've had heat advisories up for the areas where it hasn't been raining. Now, you know, we've got the live cameras here at Meteo Mundo. Really helps tell the weather story. Live look outside late on this Monday to Long Island. We're looking back to the west where it has been an overcast day, and we've just had pockets of rain coming through, and again an embedded thunderstorm. And when those showers move in, the winds will pick up. But outside of where we've had the rain and the winds, the air has been relatively still. Thunderstorms in the distance here from the Governor's Harbor area of central Eleuthera. Again, another live camera for us here at Meteo Mundo to help tell the weather story in your area. You can see the breeze there in the foreground, and passing showers and storms will continue to be a problematic thing. Now, obviously, boaters got to be very cautious of this kind of environment as widespread as the thunderstorms are. You got to watch out for the lightning there in the exposed water. So we'll continue to see this be an active pattern at least through Tuesday, if not even on Wednesday, because when I show you the broad perspective, we have waves of energy and storms all along this boundary, and it's not moving much until midweek. Now, coming up in the tropical outlook, we'll look to see if any of the models try and develop a little bit more tropically. But again, regardless of that, it's a very wet forecast. Let me go out to the broad perspective again here. You know, one of the big stories you guys have been mentioning in the comments is just how hot it's been. It's been a little bit drier in the central and the eastern side of our area. We're beginning to develop some thunderstorms, but it's a hot forecast, a lot of low and mid 90s. And again, 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 32 degrees Celsius. Feels like numbers are outrageously hot, 105 to 110 in some spots, and Fahrenheit, that's 42, even 43 degrees Celsius. Another area that will see some active weather here is going to be Bermuda. Again, passing showers and storms along this trough line, and I do expect that kind of active weather to continue. Let's get into a couple of spots that's going to see a few more thunderstorms developing today. We'll get you out to Jamaica at the hour. Again, it's been relatively quiet, but we've had a few thunderstorms, and it's been a little bit farther to the east for today. My friends in the Kingston, Portmore, Spanish Town areas, and just north of that, kind of the northern sides of St. Andrew Parish, maybe the northeast sides of St. Catherine, east of Linstead, northeast of Spanish Town. Again, a few thunderstorms developing at the hour. Good lightning strikes associated with that. Some of this will try and work its way and build its way west. We've already had kind of another thunderstorm developing in between the Black River and the Mandeville area, and this will continue to be the trend. Now, it may be fairly isolated the remainder of this Monday, but there'll be pockets of some heavier downpours and the lightning. I mentioned the Black River area. Jimmy Reed sent us this photo from yesterday in the Black River area, St. Elizabeth Parish on the southwestern side of the island. Again, you can see some of those dark clouds and those low bases to it with good passing showers and thunderstorms from time to time across Jamaica. Hopefully, if you've been desperate for some rain to help break some of that heat, you've had some of that in Jamaica lately as well. Again, it's spotty today, but the thunderstorms will be on the heftier side. Thunderstorms will dive into Cuba, and then we'll have the localized sea breeze storms. So very widespread storms for Cuba today. The Cayman Islands should be relatively dry. Later this afternoon, we'll get some isolated thunderstorms for Quintana Roo and the northern sides of Central America, but it's a relatively dry forecast with just a couple of isolated thunderstorms in the forecast for today. And again, we've had a couple of passing showers earlier in San Ignacio, but it's gotten hot. These are actual, let me double check this here, the actual air temperatures for today, still able to go above 90 degrees, but there's that little thunderstorm near San Ignacio a little bit earlier. Feels like numbers will be in the triple digits. Now, some moisture will be building quickly north across Honduras. So San Pedro Sula, La Ceiba could get into a few thunderstorms. I'm not sure if it's going to make the Bay Islands for today. Otherwise, it's hot. You get into Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Panama. It's been a stormy afternoon. Again, we have this persistent low off the Colombian coastline. It's just kicking waves of energy. Nothing tropically to develop, but again, a lot more moisture associated with that. We'll swing on over to my friends in the Dominican Republic and Haiti at the hour. Once again, thunderstorms are beginning to fire up there. They're localized, but they're on the heavier side for today. Let's check if we had any strong wind gusts as of yet. No, but you can just see that they're dotting the landscape from Lacai and Port-au-Prince and south of Puerto Plata, north of Santo Domingo, across the Samana Peninsula. Healthy thunderstorms. They're not moving very quickly as well. Before we move on, I do want to bring up something here real quick. Give me 1 second here. I'm actually doing like a little audible here. There was an earthquake earlier in the east side of the Dominican Republic. Oh boy, let's hope I can find this layer. Here we go. There was an earthquake here north of Santo Domingo. Okay, and that was this morning, a magnitude 4.4, and then a secondary one off the southeast coastline of Punta Cana. So I just wanted to highlight that again. My system can pick up on these earthquakes. If you felt this earthquake, if there was any kind of damage, or just if you felt the rattling, let me know in the comments section below. I'm always keeping an eye on all different things. I just happened to see that we had an earthquake there in the Dominican Republic a little bit earlier this morning. So, all right. I know that was a lot to just talk about that earthquake, but again, I try and cover all aspects of the weather here across our area. Thunderstorms are developing at the hour across the inland and western sides of Puerto Rico. The moisture is not as concentrated for today. There's a few lightning strikes associated with this. We'll get some heavier downpours, but once again, when it hasn't been raining, it's been very hot. Temperatures today have been in the lower 90s, feels like numbers in Ponce 103. It's been hot across the Virgin Islands as well, so hopefully you get some of this activity to cool you off. But again, it's pretty isolated in nature. Go over to the visible satellite imagery to show you the shallow moisture in play across the Lesser Antilles. Now again, these are feels like temperatures, so when it's not raining, we're getting as hot as 105 in a couple of spots. Temperatures, again, will cool down a little bit from time to time. From Guadeloupe, Dominica, back towards Martinique. Again, heavier downpours, Some gusty winds associated with some of this activity over the Dominica area, Martinique as well. So again, billowing up thunderstorms, but pretty isolated. The moisture overall is somewhat on the shallower side, so I'm not expecting widespread rain across the Lesser Antilles for today, but again, spots here and there. It's even a little bit drier today, St. Lucia, Barbados, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Grenada, and TNT as well. Live look outside to Corinth, St. Lucia. And again, it's almost a little bit of haze in the sky, but it's another beautiful late Monday afternoon here across the western side of St. Lucia. Now, not even a lot of breeze outside, just a beautiful afternoon for us here. Switching on over to our enhanced satellite imagery. Again, a little bit of moisture trying to creep up towards Port of Spain, where an isolated thunderstorm across TNT is not out of the question. Same situation across Nueva Esparta. Going to mainly be dry for today in the ABC Islands. Now, it's another hot afternoon, but it's not a bad afternoon in these areas. Temperatures in the lower 90s. When you factor in the humidity, it feels like the low triple digits. At this point in time, we're not seeing any strong breezes, and the breeze overall in Oranjestad is not as bad as it has been. Again, the sun glistening off these turquoise water. What a gorgeous shot there from Oranjestad as we pan left and right across there from the Costa Linda Beach Resort. Beautiful shot indeed. Okay, so now we're going to get into the tropics, and as we do so, thanks for taking a quick second, hitting that like button for me right now. Come join our community by hitting that subscribe button. We've got an awesome one. Appreciate you guys sharing this channel with your family and friends and those who are members of the channel and who have found other ways to support the channel via the super things. And there are some ways in the description of this video below as well. As we get into this week, it is likely that we are going to get Gabrielle, the 7th named storm of the Atlantic hurricane season. That is the G named storm. Umberto would be behind that one, the H named storm. And we are trending towards the peak of hurricane season climatologically as far as frequency, meaning that what is the date that we most see the highest activity here in the Atlantic basin and across the Atlantic hurricane season? It's September 10th. So we're just 10 days away from seeing that. And, you know, it's still pretty high through most of September with a secondary peak in the latter half of October, just a little bit. It doesn't really fall significantly back down until you get into early November. All right, so let's get out to the big perspective, talk about this wave that we've been looking at lately. Now, first of all, the Hurricane Center has been highlighting this one for days. It has finally emerged off of the West African coast. Already some healthy thunderstorm activity and just, you know, looking fairly impressive for just coming offshore. Notice that the area of development is now in orange. The Hurricane Center has now upped it to a 50% chance, and there is even a possibility that within the next 48 hours, we could get a tropical depression or a tropical storm. But we have ample time to watch this. It's about as far away in the Atlantic basin as it could possibly be from the Lesser Antilles. So days and days to monitor the situation. The area of development, again, is still a little bit farther south than what it was a couple days ago. But the biggest question is going to be, as what is likely to become Gabrielle develops, where is it going to go? And what are the factors to either keep it on a more lower latitude track closer to our islands, or have that recurve to the north and to the west into the open waters of the Atlantic, or at least at the beginning miss the Lesser Antilles and the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. So that's what we're going to be breaking down coming up in the video. Looking at the water vapor imagery, there's a lot of moisture. Yes, there's a little bit of drier air, but this one has ample moisture to play with here. It's not really about the moisture in the drier air that might be trying to hinder this system a little bit. It's actually an upper level trough which could try and produce a little bit of shear and also try and tug it and pull it to the north, which would be a fantastic thing. But again, we don't have a true low-level center of circulation yet to develop. And friends, I'm telling you, until we do, the global models have a very hard time picking up on exactly where to place the center of circulation and then ultimately how it's going to develop. Once we have that invest area, we'll start to get the tropical models beginning to run and just get a lot more data and information to feed into things to have a better understanding of how this is ultimately going to play out. There is a high likelihood that we get ourselves a tropical storm at least out of this wave, but where it's going and how strong it's going to develop are all going to be in the details as we go through the rest of the week. So let's look at the models as of today. I'm going to bring up the GFS model first, and you guys know it's halftime, so I need a little bit to wet the old whistle. Today it's vitamin water, not a sponsor, but they should be. I drink it every day. I just needed a swig. And that's all I had left. So you're looking at the GFS model of what is likely to become Gabrielle. Now, please note the GFS model is north on the northern side of this development area. This would be a fantastic development of what is likely to become Gabrielle because it is already on the north side of this and trending farther and farther to the north. I wish the European model was the same solution. The biggest difference, and really at this point in time, the only difference between the GFS and the European model is where it initializes the low-level center. The GFS model initializes the low-level center much farther north in latitude than the European model. The European model is much farther south and taking a more direct route through the Atlantic basin rather than turning north into the west. But this is the latest deterministic run of the GFS model. You can see consolidation likely maybe at about 72 hours. So by Thursday, we would get a named storm again, maybe as early as Wednesday. It's not out of the question. Now you notice it looks a little bit weaker towards the end. That's when it begins to encounter that upper level trough, and we'll just have to see if it really has an impact to begin to kind of shear apart that storm. When I bring up the wind associated with this, these are your surface-based winds. I'm going to take off that orange area so it's just easier to see. You have a nice storm here on the GFS model. Again, it's nice to also see that it's trending pretty far to the north. We'll just have to see how this plays out. I don't want you to read into too much out of any of this. Again, the biggest thing is just the fact that in a relatively short order, we get a pretty powerful storm here on the GFS model. When we also look at the spin in the atmosphere, this is going to be a vorticity product. So let me bring that up for you guys as well. I like to show you that. We'll loop this up. Again, this is not at the lowest level or it's not at the surface. It's a composite of the lower levels, but it gives you an idea of how quickly this does begin to consolidate here and how strong it's going to be. Those brighter colors are much stronger spin in the atmosphere associated with a true tropical disturbance. Elsewhere, again, and I want to highlight this coming up, but you can see that there are some waves coming out of the Gulf and into the Western Atlantic that also bear some watching as well. And then on the heels of this one, probably by next weekend, there'll be another tropical wave to be monitoring off of the West African coast. But obviously, this is the big story in town. Now, when we look at the European model, these are the ensemble members. This is a really slow loop. Again, you have likely Gabrielle developing in a couple of days, and then the ensemble members with the European model are much farther south and west. The far southwest sides of the members, as we get into early next Tuesday morning, so about a week out in time, are much closer to the northern Lesser Antilles. Now, the northeast members are certainly beginning that recurve well away from the center. So the most likely scenario from both models is still to make a recurve before the Lesser Antilles. But again, until we have a true level center, until we have tropical models beginning to run on this, we aren't just relying on the two global models at this point in time. For the most part, we have to take this with a big grain of salt. But that's the spread in the ensemble member differences between the GFS and the European, and even between the ensemble members of the European. But obviously, the European model would be a much more closer brush, potentially, with the Lesser Antilles down the road, but we would have a pretty strong storm out of this as well. So when you look at chance of development, again, the European model basically says it's likely going to happen here in the Atlantic basin with that tropical wave. Now, the other one to talk about is what could be happening off of the east coast of Florida and the northern Bahamas. The European model has been much more aggressive trying to develop something here. Now, take a look at this. These are all of the low-level centers on the European model. You had a couple developing here, and then as we get into Wednesday, you have yet another area developing in the central Gulf, and then trying to make a run over the peninsula of Florida and back into the northern Bahamas. None of these are very strong, but along that entire frontal boundary, just like we're seeing today with that mid-level spin off the east coast of Florida, the European model is a little bit more aggressive in trying to turn this into a low-level center. Now, appreciably weak, but enhancing the rainfall, the flooding potential, and just keeping things stormier, that is what this could do. But, you get into the bathwaters of the Gulf, and this really does develop. You can't rule out something quickly getting going. But again, the GFS model doesn't really pick up on that compared to what I just showed you on the European. So if we go back over here, again, this is the current situation, and I'll bring on the frontal boundary again just so you guys have an idea. So the European model is just saying, look, along this entire trough, we're getting some mid-level spin, and we can clearly see one area right here. It's just that the European model says, I think we can consolidate this into a low-level spin and try and develop at least a weak tropical system out of this. So if we look at the, I'll switch over to the HERB model here real quick. Let me bring this up for you guys. Give me just 1 second here. Actually, let me do this. Let's bring this up. Again, I love when I call audibles on myself. It's like I'm giving myself the hardest time I can possibly can. But this is a high resolution model that updates hourly, but I wanted to see just show you what it's going to do with this spin. Now, again, it never fully develops it here, but you want to talk about just kicking in a lot of moisture from Orlando to Tampa to Miami to Nassau to Freeport to Lucaya, all the way back down into the central Bahamas. There you go. And then again, you just feed all of this along this line. So it's not out of the question. It's going to bear watching the next several days. And I can promise you this, in this part of the world, if this is where you live, it is going to be a wet one. Just rounds of tropical downpours, a few embedded thunderstorms, some rotation to go along with some of these storms. So you got to watch out for the brief water spout or even the isolated tornado threat. And we'll see if anything tropically wants to develop here over the next couple of days. Best chance might be in the Gulf in a couple of days from now. All right, back out to the broad perspective here, and we'll swing on over to the GFS. I'm just showing you all different kinds of models, man. We're just rolling through everything. I love it. All right, so again, we'll watch the Gulf, we'll watch the Western Atlantic Basin. This point in time, obviously, you know, what's likely to become Gabrielle is not going to impact us in the next 3 days. So what are we going to see rainfall-wise? In the central and the eastern side of the Caribbean, there's not a lot of tropical moisture, relatively speaking. By the end of this, as we get into late Wednesday and Thursday, the next tropical wave, which is in the central main development region of the Atlantic, will begin to move in, and it's going to bring us some passing showers. This is not going to develop tropically, but it's going to aid in rain chances, especially back down towards the Windward Islands, Barbados, and St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines, Grenada, Trinidad and Tobago. Rain chances should begin to improve in your area late Wednesday and into Thursday. I've got some passing showers for Martinique and Dominica, Guadeloupe, Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis, Antigua, Barbuda, Saba, St. Eustatius, St. Bart, St. Martin, Anguilla through Thursday. Nothing outrageously high. Still, one of the bigger stories will be the heat and the humidity in your area. Again, when it's not raining, expect there to be some kinds of heat advisories in your spots, or even if there's not, take it easy in the mid-afternoon. Anegada, Virgin Gorda, on over towards Tortola, St. Croix, St. Thomas, St. John, Vieques and Culebra, with passing showers again, improving a bit over Puerto Rico into the mid part of the week. We'll continue to see isolated to scattered showers and storms across the Dominican Republic and Haiti. So a little bit better chance for rain there. Punta Cana, Santo Domingo, even back towards Lacaille. It's scattered rain for my friends in Jamaica. Again, we're not going to see a huge increase in tropical moisture, but I do expect a few thunderstorms each afternoon to help try and temper the heat in a couple of spots. Again, I hope you get it, because if not, daytime highs will be running 33, 34 degrees Celsius in a lot of locations. Obviously, it's a wet forecast for the Bahamas. Even down to the southeast Bahamas, we could swing in a little bit better chance for rain in the next couple of days. Turks and Caicos would still see more isolated than anything else. Most of the moisture is up to your north. And it's still, you know, the more localized storms. For the Yucatan, we're going to get the sea breeze storms to develop mainly just inland of Cancun and Cozumel and make a run west towards Merida and Campeche. It's isolated showers and storms from our friends in Belize City, Roatan, Guanaja, Utila, San Pedro, La Ceiba areas, Punta Gorda. And that spin, that monsoon trough, continues to feed in some moisture back into Nicaragua, portions of Costa Rica and Panama. ABC Islands, I don't have a ton of rain for you guys. Expect things to be relatively dry over the next couple of days. And then for my friends up in Bermuda, again, you're stuck along this trough line, the same one that's impacting the Bahamas. So guess what? The chance for rain is at least high every day. Maybe it stays just west of you. Maybe it slides just east. Maybe it's quasi-stationary and goes back and forth. But rain chances the next several days in Bermuda will at least be 50%. Now, boating forecast isn't outrageously high. We picked it up a bit. You can see a lot more blues and, you know, kind of those light blues out there, but we don't have the yellows and into the greens and places like that, except along the immediate east coast of the United States. So boating-wise, it's not a horrible forecast, especially in the Northwest Caribbean and in the Gulf. We could see some long period swells in the eastern side of the Bahamas. And again, please watch out for some of the thunderstorms and some of the rotation with some of the storms. Again, water spouts are not the question, and the lightning's always a big threat. you can clearly see the European model sinks that boundary farther south. Now a lot more of the Bahamas and most of South Florida and Cuba are in store for inches of rain the next several days. It's not going to surprise me if we get some localized 4 to 6 inches of rain throughout this week. A lot of that focus over the next 48 to 72 hours. So, 100, 150 millimeters of rain, not out of the question. Same situation for Panama and Costa Rica. Some spots of Haiti and the Dominican Republic, even some spots of Jamaica. It's isolated, but several inches of rain in a few spots. And that next tropical wave comes in with more impacts for the windward islands compared to farther north in the island chain. Friends, I appreciate you guys. I'll be monitoring the situation for you, and you can monitor across all of our social media platforms. We are on Instagram, TikTok, X, and Facebook. You want to send me a picture or video, it's mymeteamundo@gmail.com. Look, as always, if you have a specific question about the forecast, feel free to drop it in the comment section below. And while you're down there, thanks for taking a quick second and liking and subscribing. And please remember that Meteo Mundo is sponsored by the Lean Law Firm of Central Florida, your hometown homeowners insurance attorneys. Look at storm season, wind, hail, hurricane damage, even a burst pipe. They can walk you through every step of the insurance claim process. If you want to support someone who supports the channel, I urge you to check out leanonmelaw.com. Friends, have a great rest of your day. I'm monitoring that wave and other impactful areas of potential development and just the thunderstorms we're seeing this time of the year. I've got the latest for you tomorrow right here at Meteo Mundo.